All right. Well, good morning, everybody. No, sorry.
Actually,
Good afternoon, everybody. Today is Saturday, March the 12th. We are starting our cynical a little bit later than we normally do, but we are here nonetheless, and glad we've got a full table. We've got several folks on the Zoom software, so
standing room only.
happy to have, and there's some standing room only. I guess, yeah, good point. So we are today going to work through a document that Mary has put together for us. So Mary, thank you for that. You know, the timing is really interesting because you wanted to do this today, and at the time that we talked about it, it didn't dawn on me that today was going to be the day of the funeral. And so when I normally am kind of looking at this on Saturday mornings to try to, determine kind of where Jesus wants us to go today, he swapped it up on us. That was pretty cool.
He did.
Pretty cool. And so not to steal any thunder, but I will introduce this as the crowns. She's called about, or the 5 crowns, I guess, is the item here. And so we'll get into that, but why don't we start do our opening in prayer, and then we'll turn it over to Mary and we'll go down the road. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Come divine will, come to reign in me. With this one act, I want to embrace my entire day. I want to embrace every thought, every word, every action, and all the people I meet. The things I have to do, all my duties, I want all to be in your most holy will. I want to put my whole day right from this instant in your most holy will, so that should I be distracted, or should there be things I forget, they may all be done in your will. Amen. Come, Holy Spirit, fill the hearts of your faithful, and enkindle in them the fire of your love. Send forth your Spirit, and they shall be created, and you shall renew the face of the earth. Remember your congregation, which you have possessed from the beginning. O Lord, hear my prayer, and let my cry come unto you.
The Lord
be with you,
And with your spirit.
let us
Let
pray.
us pray. O God, who has taught the hearts of the faithful
By the
by the
light
light of the Holy Spirit, grant us in the same Spirit to be truly wise and to ever rejoice in His holy consolation. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. All right, Mary, turning it over to you.
So this cynical today and probably next week is on the crowns. And there are 5 crowns mentioned in scripture. And then the catechism talks about the 5 crowns as well. Although they don't call it the 5 crowns, but they do. How do I say that? They talk about
5 different times.
Yeah,
Or 5
the same thing that's in scripture. The catechism talks about it as well. Only they don't call it the 5 crowns. Does that make sense? Like you can't go to the catechism and do a search on the 5 crowns and pull it up, but they mention all the ones that are in scripture. So we're going to walk through, and I'm just going to read the one line, like it says James 1 verse 12. We'll just do the verses, but always on your own, go back and read the whole letter, because the whole letter really is the message. Like this is the high point, talking about the crown of life, James 1 through 12. But what was happening with St. James at this time, what was happening around him, is all important when we read the scripture. And that's how our Catholic faith has always taught us how to read Holy Scripture. Like that's why Catholics don't think they nailed the Bible, because they don't walk around and they're like doing one phrase. Because the way we've been taught our scripture is through bookends. So St. James would be in a bookend story. There'd be Old Testament, a Psalm, and St. James, as well as the Gospel. They'd all go together because it's theological. It's typology, right? So, anyways, enough of that. We don't have time. All right. So the first reading is from Scripture. It's going to be James. I think I just like find it right there in front of me, right? Here it is. Chapter 1, verse 12. Blessed is the man who endures trial. For when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life, which God has promised to those who love him. So the crown of life is that to enter into heaven is the first crown. Okay. And the catechism says, and I really don't know, like, I don't know if we want to do that and then jump to the writings, or Holy Spirit, what do you want to do?
Sure.
638.
638.
Why don't you read the scripture and I'll read the catechism,
Okay,
because I've got it. Right.
love it.
So we can go back and forth. You can get the
Okay.
next one. So this is Catechism 638. We bring you the good news that what God promised to the fathers, this day he has fulfilled to us, their children, by raising Jesus. The resurrection of Jesus is the crowning truth of our faith in Christ. A faith believed and lived as the central truth by the first Christian community, handed on as fundamental by tradition, established by the documents of the New Testament, and preached as an essential part of the Paschal mystery along with the cross. Christ is risen from the dead, dying he conquered death, to the dead he has given life.
The crown of life.
The crown of life.
Okay, so I want to read, be patient with me. We're going to go into reading the Tree of Life, November 5th, 1902, and then we're going to read the Tree of My Will. So, because this is the beginning of, so the crown of these 5 crowns is really we're going to do like a beginning and an end, like a whole story. Okay, so the Tree of Life and the Tree of My Will. So we're going to start there, and then we'll go back to the Crown of Life, and then we'll read James and the Catechism again as we read the reading. Okay, Mel?
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Whatever you want to do.
And then we'll do Incorruptible Crown and go that way. But it is, I wanted to start with November 5th, 1902. Y'all following along with me?
Yes.
So we are now going
Volume
to
four.
November 5, 1902.
And again, what we do with this cynical is that we just pull a couple, what I did this morning for this cynical is pulled a couple of readings. There's a lot more in the writings about the Tree of Life, and there's a lot more on the Tree of My Will. But as Mel and we've said for years, that this is supplementary, that to read the writings on your own, let the Holy Spirit lead you in what he wants to teach you that day. So you could do a search on the Tree of Life, and you're going to pull up more readings than just 1902. You can also go to Adam and read about the Tree of Life and so forth. So anyways, does anybody want to read this?
So this is just as a color side of this. 2 trees in the garden, right?
That's right.
Tree of life, tree of knowledge of good and evil, which is in essence the tree of death.
Right. Well, the Tree of Humanity.
Well, humanity, but humanity
Yeah.
meaning
Brought us together.
meaning that. It's interesting that, and it's an either or.
Yeah. And it is interesting because I've never heard the words tree of the human generation. Right. We've always called it the tree of knowledge. But that's when,
And it's not even knowledge, it's the knowledge of good and evil.
right.
Right.
But it was man, and why it's called the tree of the human generation, because if Adam were to have said no when tempted with the apple from Eve, he could have corrected all, and then we would have all been the tree of life, which is the tree of the divine will. Right. But he said no. So therefore, the tree of the human generations was planted, or the seed was, and then the woodworm entered into it, and sin, exactly, sin. So, but it fully, which we'll read from this writing, it's done. Jesus died on the cross. He died on that tree of the human generation. He grafted, there's many in there, and we talked about it through many cynicals, where he grafted himself into it, so to kill the roots to kill sin. And now us, by children of light, coming into the tree of the divine will, we are the root of sin is being removed. So not just the tree is dead, but you had to uproot the root system of it. So you're right, Mel. I mean, how fun is that? That we now have knowledge of really different terms of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, being called the tree of the human generations. And now you are entering into the tree of the divine will. So again, 2 generations, right? And he killed the tree of the human generation. We're uprooting it. All right.
I'll go ahead and read.
Because I keep talking so much.
We'll give you a break. November 5th, 1902. The
Just
tree
be
of life.
careful. She'll recharge if we get her a break.
That's true. That's true. Maybe we should just keep her going.
Yes.
That's true. The tree of life rooted in the heart of Jesus. This morning, my adorable Jesus made himself seen in my interior, and he seemed to have a tree planted in his heart, and so rooted into it that its roots arose from the center of his heart. In some, it seemed to be born together with it, with the same nature. I was amazed at seeing its beauty, strikingness, and height, which seemed to touch the heavens, and its branches extended out to the farthest ends of the world. Now, on seeing me so amazed, blessed Jesus told me, "My daughter, this tree was conceived together with me in the center of my heart." And from that moment, I felt in my inmost heart all the good and the evil that man would do with this tree of redemption called tree of life. In fact, all those souls who remain united to this tree will receive the life of grace in time. And when the tree has raised them well, it will administer to them the life of glory and eternity. Yet, what is not my sorrow? Even though they cannot root out the tree, nor can they touch the trunk, many tried to cut some branches off so that souls may not receive life, and to take away from me all the glory and the pleasure that this tree of life would have produced for me. While saying this, he disappeared. Fiat.
Yeah. So it's the law of grace, redemption. And we're now entering into the new tree, which is the law of love, sanctification. So the next reading, and this is dedicated to you, November 28th, 1922. So you should read it.
November 28, 1922.
Yes.
Okay, is everyone there? November 28th, 1922. The divine will is beginning, means an end of every virtue. It must be the crown of everything and the fulfillment of the glory of God on the part of the creature. Necessity that the divine will be manifested and known. I was praying, using all of myself in the most holy will of God, and with some doubts in my mind concerning all that my sweet Jesus keeps telling me about this most holy volition. And he, clasping me to himself with a light which he cast into my mind, told me, "My daughter, my will is beginning, means an end of every virtue. Without the seed of my will, it cannot be given the name of true virtue. It is like the seed for the deeper plant. After it has sunk its roots into the ground, the deeper they are, the higher the tree becomes, which the seed contains. So, first there is the seed. This forms the roots. The roots have the strength to make the plant sprout from under the earth, and as the roots sink into it, the branches are formed, which keep growing so high as to form a beautiful crown. And this will form the glory of the tree, which, unloading abundant fruits, will form the utility and the glory of the one who sowed the seed. This is the image of my church. The seed is my will, in which she was born and raised. But in order for the tree to grow, it takes time. And in order for some trees to give fruit, it takes the length of centuries. And more precious the plant is, the longer it takes. The same for the tree of my will, which is the most precious. the most noble and divine, the highest, and therefore it took time for it to grow and for its fruits to be made known. So the church has known the seed, and there is no sanctity without it. Then she has known the branches, but it is always the same tree that she has been around. Now she must know the fruits in order to nourish herself and to enjoy them. And this will be all my glory and my crown, as well as all the virtues of the entire church.
Hold on one second, just stop for a moment.
So parallel.
Mhm.
Just do anybody.
I have a psalm too that Francis, I can always tell when I've listened to Francis Hogan, or when I'm walking around listening to her, what I have highlighted in my notes. So that beginning where it starts speaking to her, my daughter, my will is beginning means the end of every virtue without the seed of my will. That part. So Francis is kind of, she had said that that was from Psalm 36, verse 9, which says, "They feast on the rich food of your house. From your delightful stream, you give them drink."
They eat from the rich foods of your house, because Catholic means universal. And so they are eating from the goods of us receiving the sacraments. So they're receiving the graces
Right.
from us receiving the sacraments, because no one can be sanctified outside of this church.
No.
So they are being sanctified through us, not only to the church, but through the divine will.
Now, what is your wonder? If instead of manifesting the fruits of my will before, I have manifested them to you after so many centuries. If the tree was not yet formed, how could I make the fruits known? All things go like this. If someone is to be made king, the king is not crowned before the kingdom, the army, the ministers, and the royal palace are formed. They're crowned at the very end. And if anyone wanted to crown the king without forming the kingdom, the army, etc., that would be a king for mockery. Now, my will was to be the crown of everything and the fulfillment of my glory on the part of the creature, because only in my will can she say, I have accomplished everything. And finding in her accomplished everything I want, not only do I make her known the fruits, but I nourish her and I make her reach such height as to surpass everyone. This is why I love so much, and I so much care that the fruits, the effects, the immense goods contained in my will, and the great good which the soul receives by living in it, be known. If they are not known, how could they be desired? Much less can anyone be nourished by them. And if I did not make known the living in my will, what it means, the values it contains, the crown would be missing to creation and to the virtues, and my work would be a work without crown. See then how necessary it is that everything I have told you about my will be manifested and known, and also the reason for which I push you so much, and how I always make you go outside the order of others. And if these, as well as the graces given to them, I make known after their death, in your case instead, I allow that what I have told you about my will be known while you are still living.
Okay.
That's what I love.
Stop.
That's what I love.
Okay.
That's what I love.
Yeah. I
Okay.
mean, there's a.
That's
I
incredible.
know.
Just, oh
I know,
my gosh.
I know.
He's telling you, the
We can
tree
live
is
it.
fully formed. It is here. It is now. He is the king. He is here in us, living this. And our desires to read this. That's why it's always shocking when people don't want to read this. And he's like, and you just like, but he says, why would you not want to know this? But then we have to fiat and just be thankful that we do.
But go ahead.
No, I'm sorry.
No.
I will ramble forever because this is the crown. This is it.
And it in that sentence, right? In that sentence, it's we've used the visual in the past of when we're praying the Our Father as an example, I think everybody wants thy kingdom to come, thy will to be done on earth as it is in heaven. I mean, even if you're just saying it rotely, like most of us did, and many still do, you're praying for it, but you're praying for something that is
Way
over there.
so young.
You know, okay, yeah, I want it.
It seems unattainable.
But it's not yet. But now he's just told us that everything that I manifest to creatures after their death, he now is telling her, in your case instead, I allow that what I told you about my will be known while you are still living. So the time of what thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven, because they know about it in heaven, and now he's telling her, it's moved from over there behind where Nikki is. It's now right here in front of my face. It's right here. And it's for those that want to believe it.
Mm-hmm.
But because this is the truth.
Yeah.
I love was it you said last week about the term that Daniel O'Connor was using about the Faustina's Diaries, maybe, where when it came out, nobody was after it. Nobody believed that it was,
They're on the forbidden list.
Yeah, and then it goes by, and the next thing you know, it's promulgated everywhere. And his point is,
It's the same.
the diary, what was
Never
written,
changed.
never changed.
No.
Right.
It never changed. What he's telling us in here is not changed.
Yeah.
It's not going to change. It's just a matter of, and he knows, he says after time, more and more will come to accept it. But it is now.
It's another mystery, right?
Yeah.
It's a truth that's always been there, but that we're able to now receive. And this all needs to be, I mean, when he says the crown would be missing to creation, to the virtues, and my work would be a work without crown. All of his stuff needs to be completed. It needs to be completed.
Mhm.
He doesn't do anything that is not completed.
Incomplete, right?
Right, and it needs to be completed. So everybody who's waiting for something else, this is it. It's complete.
Yeah.
It's done.
Oh, yeah.
Let's go.
There's nothing new. No, there's nothing next.
No.
You know,
Or
and
is there
it's-
anything new, really? I mean, it's a set, like you said, that
Well, it's the
hasn't changed.
discovery.
It's
Right.
us.
And in some regards, because it has, we always a lot of times we push back from the table and we say, see, it's always been there. It's always been there. But it goes to that point being, it is here. It is done. We're just coming to the understanding of it because of the knowledge. Because of the knowledge.
Praise because the knowledge is of it. And we have to think even I don't know what you would call them, like those who brought it over to the United States and all the things that it's gone through.
Forefathers.
Right? Our forefathers in the
Almost,
divine will. So in 2022, we are more disposed to receive this in the things that are happening around us.
Right.
Does that make even
Oh,
to
yes,
where,
we're so attentive.
they were attended back then, but it wasn't yet and it was the fulfillment, but yet they weren't speaking the way that we're
Identifying with them.
right.
Well, I mean,
And I don't know how to say that with complete credit to every single person, our Father Browns, our Dell, our Rogers, to Tom Fahey, to all of those who led up to where we're sitting at this table today, and to truly receive.
well, you
The
go back to
knowledge.
redemption. Jesus had a rollout plan. You
Right.
go to the business world, there's a rollout plan.
There
If
absolutely
you want
is.
to use that terminology, there's a rollout plan to this.
Right,
And we're on the timeline of that plan.
right,
It's an eternal end game, if you will, and it's an eternal plan.
right,
But as it relates to here on this earth, it is done.
right.
Because when you think
It has to play out in time, just as he tells
It
us,
just
it's
has to play
generation,
it
it
out
has
in
to play
time.
out in time.
and when you think, the more that we come to realize that, just to say the mass, language that's in the mass,
Yes.
and we have a knowledge of the divine will, and then as the words that we come to understand in mass hit us, we go, wow, it's always been there. Well, what does that mean? It means that it is done.
Yeah.
It's just coming to an understanding of it. So it has always been there. It is always there.
And
It's
thank
just
goodness
our
for the
understanding.
dispositions that we've been given.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
Yeah.
That's
to the
what I mean.
saints.
Yeah,
Right to the saints. That was their
Sure,
job.
Sure.
because they were part of the tree. The
Order.
tree that was
Part of the
planted.
order.
So
If
that
they
the-
weren't here, the
No.
church wouldn't be disposed. I mean, they were building the church.
no. And it's amazing.
Well,
that
and the church still needs to be disposed.
Right.
as
Right.
well.
No.
And that's why I said it's
And
amazing
that's-
that the church is going through its suffering passion now group, and we are reading this as our church because he needs us to be the pillar, the third pillar, to stand in between Mary and Jesus with Louisa to hold her up. You know, everybody's like, "Oh, the church is going underground." It is.
Yeah, no,
We have knowledge.
we know that it is. He says
Right,
it is.
it is underground. It's from knowledge of what we know it's going to happen. And we haven't turned our back on it. I remember the very beginning, first cynicals, I knew like, oh, you're going to go through the passion of the church.
Yeah.
It's 2014. That was 8 years ago. You're going to go through the passion of the church. And, you know, you was going through its suffering at that point too. But I knew it was like, you do not turn your back. You got to be St. John and Mary at the foot of that cross. There's nowhere else to turn. You're not going to be up there with the apostles in the upper room. You're going to be at the foot of the cross because the church needs you. Even though church doesn't know who you are, doesn't recognize you, you're just a person in the pew to the church. You're the most important thing. You are holding her up for it to be resurrected. He tells us in the writings how many times that if all of us were to have said no, God forbid, all of us here sitting at the table would have said no and not read it, not been disposed or whatever, he'd have destroyed the world. Gone. And therefore the world hasn't been destroyed. And so when you get into the temptations that are always like trying to knock on your door, you don't live in the divine will, you're a sinner, whatever, you know, like the world likes to throw at you. Remember that. The world still exists. So therefore you do live in the divine will, because if you didn't live in the divine will, you would have gotten rid of it.
Yeah, I just read that recently. He said, I always would say, he doesn't need us to do this. And that's true. He wants us to do this, right?
Right.
But he also told her, if they don't, to your point, Mary, if no one does this, I will not come.
Oh, I got chills.
He can't.
He can't.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
So
but
he
he
could.
can.
I mean,
Right.
he's God, right? But he
Right.
tells her,
But he can't
if I
come
don't
in the
have
passion
the
that we're
person,
talking about.
Correct.
he won't come.
He won't come.
Because he can't.
Because he
Yeah,
can't.
he can't come.
There's-
There's no
there's-
authority for
There's
him
no,
to come
there
to.
is no place for him to
There's
rest.
no kingdom for him
Yeah.
to come to.
Right.
No
Right.
place to rest, no
There's no
shelf,
fruit.
no shelf in the house, no,
He can't come
all
to
the
anywhere
different
unholy.
visuals that he's used.
This
No
writing
fruit.
for me is very marked up, so we know we've read it so many times. But to put it here at the top reading for the crowns, it's a whole different fruit flavor. And it's just interesting because this reading was, some walked into that Tuesday cynical and I said, the tree is fully there. And you looked at me and said, is that in the writings? And I said, I bet I'll find it. And here we are, what, a month later, I'm like, okay, I found it.
Oh, yeah, I forgot. I moved on too.
I
But
found
it's
it.
great.
It's
Yeah.
here.
It's all
It's
coming
here
back.
because you come on. You have knowledge of something that 7 billion people in the world do not know. And if that's not the greatest treasure, thank you.
And it isn't just the knowledge, it's where what our ability is, the fruit that we're able to do.
Yeah.
The acts that give fruit versus a dead act.
Right,
Mhm.
right.
Mhm.
To know
Yeah, it's
that
not
your
just one.
friend that you went to the funeral today, in such a short time, you're gonna be back together, resurrected with her. Oh my gosh. Like the church has been talking about the resurrection of the dead for 2,000 years. And we are reading, oh, it's about to turn the corner. You know, and we'll get further into the writings where there's nothing to fear. You know, fear is such a stupid thing.
No,
There's
I know.
nothing
I think
because
it's
it's like,
like the epitome of fear is death. Like,
right,
you know,
yes. And you're like,
and in so many different ways. But
and one of the
now
letters
this
from,
takes that out.
yeah,
There's just a piece.
there's a letter from one of these
Satan.
of St. Paul. I don't know if it's 1 Corinthians or 1, and he says, some of you will not taste the sleep of death. You won't, because the kingdom's coming. Oh my gosh. And they thought that 2,000 years ago. Oh, just contemplate.
Right.
They thought that 2,000 years ago that they were going to like wake up and Jesus was going to
Yeah.
come back. But it's taken 2,000 years,
Yeah.
and now we know how he comes back.
Well, I think it's interesting too, when people fear death, speaking of that, sometimes it's like, well, I haven't gotten to my highest where I want my job to be, or I don't want to leave my children.
It's
The
It's about
fear
me.
I can
of
sleep when the
leaving.
wind blows.
I
Right.
can sleep in the
And
wind.
so
Yeah.
when we talk about
Yeah.
dying to self, that's, I think, part of the death that people are, well, I know it is, are
Yeah.
afraid of. I don't want to die to self. That means I'd have to give up something. So dying at a young age is like, well, I won't get to raise my kids. I won't get to become president of my company. I won't be able to drive a Tesla. Like
Right.
all these things, just throwing stuff out there.
Michelle.
You might have,
Michelle.
no. But anyway, so,
Replace that with a Bentley.
so, right, why stop at
No
Tesla?
gas cars. No gas cars.
Anyway, right, so I just think the dying to self, that's really resonated with me recently. So I think the tree of life, the dying to self, the roots, all that.
Yeah.
Because we never knew what that truly meant, or I didn't.
I
Dying to
didn't.
self, I'll give up my creamer and my coffee during Lent.
Right.
Yeah.
I
Little-
won't watch a TV show. I won't watch TV during Lent. I mean, that to
Yeah.
me was dying to self.
Yeah.
This is
For 40 days.
This is for 40 days.
Yeah.
Then 40 days,
Excluding
Saturdays.
Saturdays.
And
And
Sundays, I
Sundays,
could have my
yeah.
creamer and my coffee. So this is like a totally different, dying to self. It's that journey that we talk about, and it needs to be that completed work.
And it's interesting because like the whole conversation of purgatory, and you hear people like, Jesus did it all, I don't have to do anything. And you're like, look at him like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh.
No.
Oh my
All
gosh.
Jesus did is open the door to the stairway.
That's right.
Exactly.
Right.
Still got to climb it up.
But like I said, they
Yeah.
have knowledge that 7 billion people in the world don't have knowledge of. Like they still, well, Jesus did it all, I don't have to do anything. I don't have to put sacraments, sanctification's all done. He's the righteous one. I can just do whatever I want to do. And then us Catholics, it's like, even though we're thinking Lent's 40 days, give up the creamer, at least we are in a
Yeah.
redemptive
Mindset.
mindset of like, okay, there is stuff to do.
And to
You know,
sanctify ourselves.
And then yet
Yeah.
you come to the knowledge of this and you're like, the only thing to do is to live in the moment,
Mhm.
to give yourself
And to
completely over
want
to
it. The only
God.
thing to do is to
Right.
want it.
Right? And don't
And
you
be
con-
now
and be
even driving to
consistent.
work, you just like, I dear God, please know how much I want this.
Yeah.
Like
Just to be in action.
yeah. Like I don't want to think about what I'm doing
Present.
or how I'm
Just be
doing. Just
present with him.
yes.
Act,
Yeah.
perennial.
Yeah.
They don't know time.
That's
And
the
he's
truth,
had a
isn't
lot
it?
of fun with me.
It
in that
is.
moment.
Yes. Anybody
It's
else?
fun.
So Paula, you have a comment?
I like to add something. It's about the pic. I like very much this picture about the tree, the church as the tree, and it reminds me on the parable of the mustard seed. This little seed who must die, and then it's the kingdom is like this tree coming out of this mustard seed. It's the biggest tree. And here Jesus said that his will is the seed, but I think we can also understand that Jesus himself is this seed. This is this seed. Jesus died, and this big tree is coming out of he's dying. And the point is that what my thought is the fruits. Now it's the time that the fruits come out, and a fruit always contains the seed. So it's Jesus, the divine will, and the fruits that are the children in the divine will, they have this seed inside. They are like Jesus.
It's an excellent
Yeah.
visual, isn't
It
it?
is a beautiful
Yeah.
visual.
Jesus is a seed. We're the fruits. We propagate yet again, and that'll continue on.
Well, divine lives, right?
Divine
The fruits,
lives,
you're eating the knowledges and you're
Mhm.
doing acts, and
They're
all those
fundated
seeds
with-
in you are
yeah.
propagating, as you said, to create what?
Yeah.
Divine
More
lives.
divine lives.
It's a produce God.
Yeah, under the ground.
Yeah. So, and it's so sturdy, you can't do anything about it. Yes, there will be people who will stiff arm it, but
And just again, for definitional, for someone that hears divine lives and goes, well, what does that mean? It's an act that is alive, therefore it's a life. It is a divine life. So when we talk about divine lives and creating divine lives, it's the redoing of acts that go from being dead because they were done in the human, by the human will, to being acts that are redone or repaired by the divine will. And then they become, because now they are living,
Yeah.
alive acts. So that's a new life.
All the act, all
Because
the,
initially, when I first started hearing that, I said, "New lives." Well, how is a new
Yeah.
person? I was always
Right, that's what I
attributing
used
that
to
a
think too.
person.
Yeah.
And
Me
it's
too.
not the person; it's the act. It's the act that God gave us.
Yeah.
From from everything that we've defined, right? It's your eye batting to your breath to your heart beating to my hands moving and your nodding and whatever that may be. It's all given to us by God from love, and all He wants is to love and to thank you back for it.
oh my
And
goodness.
but if He doesn't get it back, then once your nod is over, it's over.
Mhm.
But in the eternal world, when it's given back to Him with His love, that nod is going on all the time because it's live.
It turned.
Adam and Eve lived in the garden that they were always creating divine lives. And then they fell. They were able, through the effects of creation, to reproduce human lives, but no longer allowed to create divine lives. And now we're at the end of time where we go back to all of our acts creating divine lives. And that's in every, resurrect, everything being in light. There's a reading within the last couple months, for those who are reading the dailies, where Jesus said that the will of the Father was for Him to come and to produce Himself for every human being that ever lived. And now that's our job, Him and us, right? Can't do it without Him. So when I say it's our job, always know that it's Him in us. I'm not speaking any other way.
Never
You could
any
even speak-
doubt about that
Okay.
by any comment. No, I'm saying
Right.
us, but to be for anyone who happens to be watching.
Well, if you have knowledge of this, you know that you're not speaking
For yourself
for
anymore.
yourself
You're not-
anymore. You're
you're
speaking
right.
for Him. That's our job. That's the divine lives that you're creating for not every human being, but if it was a tree of the human generation and the tree of life and the tree of the divine will, then all those acts would be dead fruits, right? Or not even fruits at all, just be dead. And like you said, then Jesus came, took all those acts, suspended it so that we could come in, take them all, and pour all the graces.
Have the opportunity.
Have the
to
opportunity.
do that.
Yes, incredible.
The honor, the privilege.
The fact that you have knowledge of it is the fact that you know it's happening. Okay.
And back to what Paula said too, I just have a couple verses, again, Francis, I love it. Takes you back to that it has been there in scripture, is Luke 8:11, and it talks about parable of the sower. So it speaks about how the seed is the word of God. Then to her, Matthew 13:31 is the parable of the mustard seed.
Yeah.
And so he says, he proposed another parable to them. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed that a person took and sowed in a field. So when we say the seed is the word of God, he calls this his fifth gospel. We've all, the word of God, that's where life is in the knowledge is the word of God. And like before we see the Eucharist, we say, only say the word and my soul shall be healed. That's always kind of hit me, and it's really hit me recently about only say the word. Only say the word. What is that? I feel like Mary. I do. I'm like hitting on these. Only say the word. And he said, my word is the knowledge is the divine will. Only say the word, and my soul shall be healed. What happens when you know the knowledges of these? Your soul is healed.
Because it's Him.
It's the word of God.
Yeah.
So just wanted to
Love it.
shout out to Paula with the mustard seed.
Love
You
it.
and Francis are on the same page.
And I'm just going to read the last sentence here, which we've been saying over and over. If it is not known, it will not be appreciated. Okay, that's what we beat that one. And nor loved. Will not be appreciated nor loved. Knowledge will be like manure for the tree, which will make the fruits mature. And once they are well matured, the creatures will nourish themselves from them. What will not be my contentment and yours?
Contentment, peace,
Mhm.
rest. this is it. This is him. And once they are well matured, what does he say? Will be like manure for the tree, which will make the fruits mature.
Fertilizes.
So every knowledge you attain, you're maturing the fruits, and now these are the fruits, these crowns that we're about to get into, that we're, well, we'll discuss when we get into it. So, tree of life and the tree of my will. So now let's get into the crowns.
You want to go back to do you want to go back, even though we read it at the beginning?
Yes.
And go back and do James and the catechism again?
Yes, let's do it. You're such a good teammate. I'll do James. So the first one is the tree of life, the crown of life, the crown of life. From James chapter 1, verse 12. Blessed is the man who endures trial, for when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life, which God has promised to those who love him. And then the catechism.
Right, and this is number 638, and it's in the profession of faith, in the section of he descended into hell, on the third day he rose again from the dead. And this is in paragraph 2, on the third day he rose again from the dead. We bring you the good news that what God promised to the fathers, this day he has fulfilled to us, their children, by raising Jesus, rose again from the dead. The resurrection of Jesus is the crowning truth of our faith in Christ. The faith believed and lived as the central truth by the first Christian community. The resurrection, the central truth of the first Christian community. Handed on as fundamental, so it's a fundamental truth by tradition, established by the documents of the New Testament, and preached as an essential part of the Paschal mystery along with the cross. Christ is risen from the dead. Dying, he conquered death. To the dead, he has given life.
Okay.
And then your reading from this is April 15th, 1919.
Yes.
I'm wondering how you're ordered here.
Themed.
April 15, 1919.
Yes, Mr. Order, they are not in, oh my goodness.
No, I understand. I got it. I figured out
Oh,
how to put it
okay.
together.
Okay.
That's my point.
Because they're not in date order by any means, but they're in crown order.
Right. No, that's the way you've done it. And I see it's also in tax order too.
Yeah, I know.
April the 15th.
Oh.
Oh,
What are the two things people that you can't get rid of? Taxes.
No, we just got rid of debt.
Just got rid of debt.
not
We just got to get rid of taxes.
Yeah.
There's still work to be done.
Although Jesus said, right, render unto Caesar what is
Yeah,
Caesar.
That's right.
Under God what is God.
Yeah.
Pay your taxes and focus on your learning of the divine law.
Right. I think that's what he said, yeah.
Who wants to read this great reading? Aaron,
Sure.
read it slow.
Yeah, so, okay.
Thanks, Aaron.
April 15th, 1919. Greater things are done after the minor ones and are the fulfillment and the crowning of those. The resurrected humanity of Jesus, symbol of those who live in his will. I was fusing myself in the holy will of my always lovable Jesus, and together with my Jesus, my intelligence was wandering in the work of creation, adoring and thanking the supreme majesty for everything and for everyone. And my Jesus, all affability, told me, my daughter, in creating the heavens, first I made the stars as minor spheres, and then I created the sun as the major sphere, endowing it with so much light as to eclipse all the stars, as though hiding them within itself and constituting it king of the stars and of all nature.
Hold on a second. As he writes that, or as he tells that to her and she writes it down, it's an inherent knowledge. It's an inherent fact that you know. Because you think about it, you look out the sky today, you see nothing, right? Because the light of the sun is so overwhelming, so immense, so strong, and but when it's there, then the orbs, as he calls them, have have their time. Sorry, I just had to interrupt you.
It is my usual way to do minor things first as preparation for greater ones, these being the crowning of the minor things. While being my relator, the Son also conceals the souls who will form their sanctity in my will, the saints who lived in the mirror of my humanity as if in the shadow of my will be the stars. The former souls, although coming later in time, will be the suns.
It's interesting because he says the former
Yeah.
souls, although coming later in time, will be the sons.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. The former souls, yes, a leapfrog.
Yeah.
The saints who lived in my mirror, the mirror, remember a likeness and image. So they lived in the image, the mirror of my humanity, as if in the shadow of my will, because remember, it's the void, the shadow, the mirror. Unity,
Fullness, yeah.
but I call it something else, likeness, right? Unity. It is unity. Don't question yourself, Mary. You know it. Lived in the mirror of my humanity, as if in the shadow of my will be the stars. The former souls, although coming later in time, will be the sons. He says the former souls, for those of you who have read this, I'm just bringing it back to your memory. When Adam sinned and all of creation just wanted to go inside of itself and just be done, even God himself, and Jesus came out and showed him his humanity and showed him his wounds and said, no, we got this. And so did the children of light. That's what he's referring to when he says the former souls, although coming later in time. You were the first and you were the last.
I maintained this order also in redemption. My birth was without glamour, rather it was neglected. My childhood was without splendor of great things before men. My life in Nazareth was so hidden that I lived as if ignored by all. I adapted myself to do the smallest and most common things of human life. During my public life, there were a few great things, but still, who knew my divinity? Nobody, not even all the apostles. I passed through the crowds like any other man, so much so that anyone could approach me.
Pause. Nobody, not even all of the apostles. Which one knew about his divinity? John.
When did he come to know about his divinity?
At the Last Supper.
And then how did he learn more knowledges even after the Last Supper?
With living with Mary.
Which would make perfect sense because
She
Mary
was
was
divine.
Mary was divine.
Yeah.
One in the will.
I love it because you see those little words in there, like you could just read over them, but they're like these like little like, it's a clue, Nancy Drew.
Well, in the Last Supper one, I just read that reading about how at the Last Supper of Jesus, he knew that what's his name?
Judas.
Sorry, was
What's his name? Oh, what's his name?
What's his name? Judas would betray, he felt that sorrow, right? He was giving him all his love. And Judas was just not receiving it. And so that's when he said, I pulled John.
And so he
into
took John and I pulled
to
John to
listen
my
to
heart.
heartbeat.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's, I think, when that divinity came for John.
And one of the things too that
Oh, then that's what I read. Yes.
one of the things too that we come to learn, we've used, I think, many descriptors of it in the past, but peeling the onion back or going down into a layer or whatnot, or through the veils. One of the things that that happens to us here is that with our differing knowledges that we come to, and as we read these writings, we come to understand things more intently or more deeply. And I use this for me as the example in Genesis, the very beginning, the image and likeness. Use those words for years interchangeably. Interchangeably.
Yeah.
Interchangeably.
Yeah.
But then when you go, wait a minute, those are actually two words used in the very beginning by God, image and likeness, and they're not interchangeable. We've come to learn.
Yeah.
They're not.
Right.
Our faith, our what we've been living by, our Catholic faith, and frankly, all faiths, purpose is to keep us, I use the term within the white line, so to speak, but it's the boundaries by which we believe and we follow and we acknowledge, because we're trying to operate in the image. Earlier, there was the word reflections.
Yeah,
It was a reflection
Yeah.
of Jesus. So the image, there was the mirror. I think
Right.
the mirror was a word that was in
Yes.
there as well. But all of those are trying to operate in the image, which is what
saints do.
faith and what the saints taught us and did and whatnot. But then we're rolling in to say, then we roll in to say, okay, but now if I tack onto that, the Our Father, the first thing we ask for in the Our Father, right? Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. We pass over those words.
Mhm.
But then when you come back and you think about it, you go, well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
To live on earth as it is in heaven.
I've questioned that for years.
And we all,
This is
I
Yeah,
didn't know that it was
I can't do this. But on earth as it is in heaven, it's the likeness.
Right.
It's the likeness. The image of the faith gets us to the image. On earth as it is in heaven gets us to the likeness. And the book of heaven, as Louisa has written down, all these things, these knowledges from Jesus, is the pathway to do it.
yes,
The sacraments get us the image.
That is
yes.
That is the
Will gives us
divine
the
will.
likeness.
Yeah, that is the divine will.
That, and I think a lot of times they'll also correlate the image and likeness to the intellect and will as well. And they'll have the saying of grace builds upon nature, because the fall really affected our will
Right.
more than it affected our intellect, because our intellect just gives us the ability to choose. But the will is the thing that really informs our decision of what goods are. So that's why,
And now we have a choice.
well, the intellect is how you make the choice. That's what you're making the choice with.
But the will gives us the ability
Yeah.
to know that we have a choice, and
So
then our
that you could-
intellect decides which one.
So you have an actually informed of what is good and what is not good.
Mm.
Because with the fallen human will, you would say, you're not really going to have a very well informed choice of what's good or not, because that will darken your intellect such that you don't know.
Follow will.
Yeah.
Does darken your intellect.
Is that the Father forgive them? They do not know what they're doing.
Yeah,
I think
Yeah.
yeah.
and they don't.
They don't, because their intellect is darkened.
Mhm. And so giving up the fallen
By
human
self-will.
will over to the divine will, you're able to,
See things.
you're able
differently.
to see things much more clearly for what they are.
Yes,
Light.
to where
Or
you,
light,
Come out
yes.
of the
yes, to where you can argue with God on the level of God for those souls.
dark for humanity. Right.
Whereas before
Couldn't do it.
you couldn't, you had no knowledge. And he wants us to argue on behalf of those souls.
Well,
We'll get to
or you
that, that's
could
one of the crowns.
stay back. You could do it, but it's not on the same level.
Correct.
It's not. It's therefore, and as he said many times in the book, I seek the return of all the love that I gave out at the same level at which I gave it, and the human will cannot reach that equality.
Correct. An example of that is you guys just came back from a funeral. God is filling that family with grace to get through this time of their sorrow and suffering. Whereas you're coming in with the knowledge of we're about to resurrect, she'll be here, we'll all be one. You don't live of the law of grace, you're living of the law of love. And because you live with the law of love, you can challenge, compete, pound God on his level, right? Whereas grace was something he gave to you.
You're doing it by grace.
You
because
did it by
you've
grace,
worked through
law of grace.
to get to love.
Correct.
Yeah.
And now you're full of grace because you're full of love to argue on the behalf of all souls. And it's what you said. It's now that knowledge. It's our intellect is that their soul is memory, intellect, and will. And so our intellect is changed. It's no longer intellect with grace, it's intellect with full love.
Well,
And
it's-
how you
it's not
see
intellect
things.
as we measure it from a human standpoint,
Correct.
from an IQ or
No.
Correct.
or whatever
Trust
kind of
me,
level.
it's not.
Because I mean, it
Thank
also goes
goodness.
back. It also goes back to the children have it the easiest to be able
That's
to
right.
to access the Jesus and his will, whereas the learned or have the most difficulty.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. That's the whole, who's doing it in me? It's 1 Corinthians chapter 12. Who's doing it in you? God. It's always been God doing it in you. Recognize him and it's going to be awesome. Try to think you're going to do it yourself and
You know?
Failure.
failure.
Okay.
Okay, go on. This is fun.
Where did I leave off?
After apostles. Well, no, you did do that.
Just start. I
Yeah.
passed through
Just I
cracks.
passed through.
Here.
Look for apostles.
Yeah.
I'm looking.
So after that,
I hope I didn't touch
Sitting on the
my-
table.
They're really on the second paragraph.
look for divinity and apostles.
I maintain this.
I didn't go that far, I
No,
don't
you
think.
didn't.
I maintain.
Right here. I passed through the crowd.
I passed through the crowds like any other man, so much so that anyone could approach me, talk to me, and if needed, even despise me. And I, interrupting Jesus, said, Jesus, my love, how happy those times were, and even happier those people who, just by wanting it, could come close to you, talk to you, and be with you. And Jesus, ah, my daughter, only my will brings true happiness. It alone encloses all goods within the soul, and making itself crown around the soul, constitutes her queen of true happiness. Only these souls will be the queens of my throne, because they are a birth from my will. This is so true that those people were not happy. Many saw me, but did not know me, because my will did not reside within them as center of the life. Therefore, even if they saw me, they remained unhappy. Only those who received the good of receiving the seed of my will in their hearts disposed themselves to receive the good of seeing me resurrected.
That's huge. Only those who receive the good are receiving the seed of my will. So not the fullness of his will, but just the seed of it. As you said, the mustard seed, the faith, the tree.
So the will, I'm sorry, the seed of the will is in all creature. By
By virtue of it having life. If you're defining the seed as the divine will, the
exactly.
divine will is in all created
Right.
things.
And
Because
so
it is when it's not there, there is no life. So whether it's running, whether it's operating,
right,
that life
yeah.
is what we're really, who's operating it, but it is in
It's
everything.
in everything,
Well,
in
yes.
every creature, but it is not
It's in
it's
every,
not it doesn't become
Primary.
rooted, sprouted until we
fecundate it,
fecundate it. Exactly.
which is the image of the sun, light, heat, and energy. So we have lived, us as humans, not the animals and the trees and the sun, they have the full will reigning in them.
Right.
We are living of the
Because
effects,
they have
No
no,
choice.
the effects. of
there's
the
no
divine-
choice.
Right.
They-
But because of the fallen man, we have been living of the human generation, which is the effects of the divine will. And so the first seed was to accept the resurrection. And if you go back to the history of scripture, remember the Sadducees didn't believe in the resurrection, and the Pharisees didn't believe that he was, who he said he was, because he didn't come the way that they thought he would come. So there was a lot of rejection of him up until really Pentecost. And the apostles coming out and able to speak in tongues, able to speak the word of God and able to share it, then people would be baptized and accept the seed of his resurrection. That was what was planted, was the seed of resurrection. And now he's saying in the reading that we just read, it's fully grown now. It's the tree of my will is fully grown. Is that so? There's people still stiff arming the resurrection.
Okay.
Mhm.
That's
So
why
it's-
they were sad, you
okay.
see.
So when
Yes.
I read only those who receive the good of receiving the seed
Yes,
of my will in their heart,
yes,
dispose them to receive the good of seeing me resurrect.
correct. Because there was another reading where he said a few saw him resurrection and even fewer saw him ascend into heaven. So there were still those who would not even accept the seed. But remember, Pentecost didn't come until 10 days after the ascension. So then it was through the Holy Spirit, divine love going through, and people, of course, their soul said what it said yes to it. So,
So
order.
I guess what I keep thinking is, 3.5 years ago, when I came to my first Divine Will meeting in that room over there, the seed of the Divine Will was asleep. That's how I felt until that night. And so I'm still stuck in that place that night was when I received when I received the good of receiving the seed of his will in my heart. I don't know why I'm wanting to put that together with what we're reading, but that's all that keeps coming. I'm like, my seed of the divine will operating in me blossomed or became alive.
Maybe this
Because-
helps. Maybe this helps. So the divine will is in, because we read in an earlier reading that not only we're born, not only are we born with original sin, we're also born with all the acts that Adam did before. So we are born with the divine will. That's kind of the way I look at it.
Absolutely.
So we're born with the divine will. It's, as Mary says, it's the effects. But it's because we're living in this world, it's the effects of the divine will. However, it's easiest for you to kind of reconcile that. For me, it's just a fact of what.
Well, and she
provides-
was disposed in
provides
the womb
life.
of God to say
So
yes.
so a different way is that seed is there. The seed of the divine will being able to sprout out of you is there. But there's two wills that can operate in you. That's the human will that can operate in you. It's the divine will that can operate in you. Usually the human will has got its hand wrapped around the divine will so tight it doesn't let it do anything. That night, because of your disposition to be here, that night, something happened and the grasp loosened. And something went from your head to your heart. Then that was that first disposition, that first growth, that first knowledge about what all this means and what it can do for God. And then it's sprouted from there.
Right.
So I don't know how that works in
No.
a sowing and a farming stage.
No.
either.
I've had this conversation so many times,
Yeah.
Bill and I, and I'll never forget anyways. So what he's telling us is that the seed of his divine will, that tree was planted in his resurrection. Because so you've always had the seed in you because you always believed in his resurrection. And so you've gone through sanctity through his church, as we just read. You had to go through the church to where it is fully bloomed. When you walked into the house and received that knowledge, it's when you started eating from the fruits. And now from eating from the fruits, you've accepted the fruit, right? You've accepted the fruit from the tree. And so now your acts are spreading out the seeds for the creation of divine lives. Did you come to learn more and more and more? You desire grow. Yes. Okay. There's a reading. I should just wear a shirt. There's a reading. He said, if you fall away, the only way you can come back is to get back into the writings. Like if you step out of the writings, you think that you don't have to read anymore or whatever, it stop producing fruits. If you got to come back to this. It's the same thing as the gospel. He tells it, that's the example he used, is that those who have fallen into sin or whatever, get back into the gospels, get back into the church. That's how you become, keep growing into it. So you're never done reading these writings. So if you're never done reading the writings, then the first time you started hearing the writings was the first time you ate from the fruits and you started producing acts in the divine will. Because there's no end to reading the writings. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So if there's no end, then your beginning is when you've received the first knowledge, not when you've read it 20 times or you've experienced this or whatever. You wouldn't have known to do what to do if you did not receive the first knowledge. And you can stiff arm the first knowledge and never let it absorb into you. As we've seen. Not from you, but does that help?
Is there someone
So
that's got
was
their hand up?
It wasn't 3 years
Okay.
ago that you came to live in the divine will. This is what Lynette is saying. You were destined to always live in the divine will. It's when you were living out your time to be disposed for you to say yes. And here you are 3.5 years later. We're still reading the same readings. Like I said, these are very much marked up, but you're reading it a
Well,
whole
it's the same
different
reading.
level. Yeah.
It's the same words. It's the same reading, but and I know, I'm sorry, I'm repeating because everybody knows this, but as the knowledge come in, every time you read it, it's different because you know more and you see more in it. And the next time you learn from it and you go, you read other writings, and the next time you're back into another cynical and it's another reading and you read it again and you go,
To see expansion.
You know,
well, yeah,
I
your
mean,
capacity should expand.
it's like what Francis and other people said, don't worry about a heresy.
Yeah.
Because if the person keeps reading this, they will have automatic correction.
Yeah.
You don't need to worry about someone saying something, which a lot of the world has been so afraid, like, oh, you're going to stop our canonization. Oh, you're going to do this. No, keep reading. You will correct yourself. Same as the Gospels, right? Just keep reading.
I think it's similar to I used this example probably last week of looking at the sky and looking initially just with your eyes, and then you get a small little telescope, and you look and you can see the stars a little brighter. And we get to the point where each time we look with the stronger magnification, which is each time we gain more knowledge, we can see deeper and deeper. Now you're looking through the Hubble telescope, and we know that at some point our technology will probably take us where we're seeing even more out in the sky. But each time you're looking, because of what you're using, the tools you're using, what your knowledge is, you see it better. And it's the same thing. You're still looking at the exact same sky. Nothing's happened to the sky. It's just the tools and knowledges you have when you're looking at it.
So the theme of this is, the theme of this is the crown of life. So everything we're saying we get to experience here on earth, whereas our saints, those who've passed away, the blessed, started seeing the sky through the telescope once they entered into heaven.
And
So
now,
this, again, the theme of this is you've received the crown of life on earth.
Mhm.
Which is what he said to her in that first reading.
Nadira, did you have something?
Sorry,
I'm
Nadira,
sorry.
We did good at stiff arming you there for a little while. I think. Sorry about that.
Oh, no, I just had a question. If somebody could comment on the thief on the cross next to Jesus, to whom he said, today you'll be with me in paradise, because here it said, only those who receive the good of receiving the seed of my will in their hearts dispose themselves to receive the good of seeing me resurrected.
So
that last line.
So Jesus, when he died on the cross, he went into Hades and he went into purgatory. He opened up the doors from purgatory, took those souls from Hades, paradise, into purgatory, because they had to live of his humanity. So every soul has to live of his humanity, be disposed of everything to reach into heaven, to be the perfect image and likeness of God, to enter into heaven. So he didn't say, today you'll be with me in heaven. He said, today you'll be with me in paradise. And it is a place that the souls would go to learn about the life of Christ. You have to go through his humanity before you can get into the divinity. So that's what he was saying to the good thing.
Why is that? Because the only way to the Father is
through the Son.
Through the Son.
Yeah. So if the Father's a divinity, the only way you can get there is through his humanity. So the good thing.
I think because people associate paradise with heaven.
Yes.
Yeah.
Paradise is associated with purgatory.
Yeah, well, it's funny because in Dante's Purgatorio, Eden is the highest level of purgatory. It's right before you enter into heaven.
Eden.
Yeah, the garden.
I bet there are different levels.
Absolutely.
Of purgatory.
There's different levels of.
As in heaven, as in.
There are different levels
Yes.
of everything.
Exactly.
Right. And because purgatory has such a negative connotation to it, but oh my gosh, no,
You're there.
they do not want to come back to earth.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in heaven, and it's a place. It's a heaven and hell are states of soul, and purgatory is a place. There's a difference. So you do have to go through the humanity of Christ to get into the divinity.
So paradise is an upper level of purgatory. You're saying?
No, I'd say that paradise was an upper level of purgatory.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Right
because he's right next to Christ. He asked to be forgiven for his sins. He was truly sorry. And he was suffering, probably gave his suffering over to Christ at that moment. He did everything that you're to be relieved of all sin and punishment of sin. So he probably just had to spend a little, but it's not a bad place.
Right.
That's a good.
You've made it.
I'm glad you-
Yeah.
I'm glad you
Yeah.
said
You're on the team.
Everybody,
Yeah.
and I say that because there was a whole conversation with the Protestant last night about purgatory. And I'm like, it's not that bad of a place.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you have to be perfect to get into heaven. So you can live your purgatory here on earth.
that. Everyone's always questioned that, you know, about the man on the one on the cross next to him saying that, going,
Today we do
Paradise.
in paradise.
yeah, that's the thing a lot of people. do.
Paradise, if I remember right, correct me, anybody on this. Paradise is where Jews wanted to go.
True.
That was their heaven.
Oh,
Really?
You know what?
Was-
He's right.
so he's
Don't
speaking to
leave
a
out the
Jew.
part that he was Jew. He was speaking to a Jew.
Right.
Oh,
And that's where they wanted to go.
Yeah.
That was their highest level.
It
What
was.
was paradise for that? I don't really understand that.
I guess I almost want to say it's probably the same
what do you
place that
consider
they were
paradise?
before Jesus came and got them out of paradise, like the Saint Joseph's and the John the Baptist and so forth, the Abrahams and so forth. Like they.
Abraham.
But remember, isn't it scripture too that the Jews have to wait till all the Gentiles come into the flock and then they will be released to come in? Like they're not. The children, the Jewish people, our Jewish brothers and sisters, still even to the day call themselves children of Israel. You know how sad that is? Who are you a child of? But they're a child of a nation. Because they have never
A favored nation.
should
Yeah.
they've
From the Old
never
Testament.
accepted Christ to
Right.
become a child of God.
except
So-
the Messianics, right?
I don't know.
The Messianic Jews do.
Okay.
But then I guess then
But they have to
Whole
go.
thing's
So
confusing,
yeah,
yeah.
you're right. And it was promised them, right? It was promised that they
You were
would
just
have their
telling me
own
about
paradise, their own
Promised
kingdom.
them.
Yeah, yeah. They were.
That gets back to the context.
Sorry.
Knowing
It's
the
all right.
context.
I knew I was sitting
Yeah.
right there.
All
In
right.
scripture, not just a line.
We used
Well,
to have
If
Messianic
we want to
services
step
at
outside
Lakewood.
just a little bit, it also is an example that there are various levels, and I don't mean levels as in necessarily good or bad.
Sure.
Right.
It's just different things
It could
going
be.
on
It's not, none of
at
it's
different
bad.
levels.
be-
Because
let's
we
put it
always
this
want to
way.
say it's
Yeah.
either or.
No, yeah, right, right.
And there's
Oh,
multiple
yeah.
examples, not only in scripture, but also when he talks to Louisa about, well, I mean, we would say, there's different rooms in my father's house.
I was just gonna say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My house.
Yeah,
has
and
Right.
even
many
he
rooms.
says that Mary has been given the honor to like people who think, to reestablish the 9 levels. So she will put you, I'm not saying it right, but she will reestablish
Well, but the
who
point
the
is
highest,
that
lowest. So
part of the knowledge is that this context of one or the other or the third, there's
Sure.
there's heaven, hell, and purgatory. Yes, that's what we've been learned. That's what we've been taught in terms of help us getting to the image and stay within the image of Christ. But one of the things he discusses that it is a on multiple and in multiple places is this context of my father's house has different rooms. My father's
many
palace has different
Many rooms.
many. I forget the exact words, but house and palace are
Yeah.
used together. And the stairway to the different levels of the palace and whatnot. So it's there's
Variety of ways that it is
Yeah.
expressed.
okay, but we're on the
Yeah.
crown.
we're on the crown.
Why?
Yeah. How'd you let us get off
Well,
space?
because well, but again, it's amazing that we're sitting having conversations about something that you wouldn't have learned until you died and went to heaven. But we now
Yes,
having
why didn't you tell me?
conversations, questions are being asked, and they're fantastic. And not
Mhm.
only are questions being asked, we have volumes to answer the questions. So
We know that it matters.
yeah,
We do know that
we
it
do know it
matters.
matters. So you back up. Do you remember yet?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now the portent of my redemption was the resurrection which more than the refulgent sun crowned my humanity, making even my most tiny acts shine with such splendor and marvel as to astonish heaven and earth. The resurrection will be the beginning, the foundation, the fulfillment of all goods, crown and glory of all the blessed. My resurrection is the true sun which worthily glorifies my humanity. It is the sun of the Catholic religion. It is the glory of every Christian. Without resurrection, it would have been as though heavens without sun, without heat, and without life. Now my resurrection is the symbol of the souls who will form their sanctity in my will. The saints of the past century symbolize my humanity. Although resigned, they did not have continuous act in my will. Therefore, they did not receive the mark of the Son of my resurrection, but the mark of the works of my humanity before my resurrection.
Hold on one second. They did not have continuous act in my will. Therefore, they did not receive the mark of the Son of my resurrection. Sorry, I wanted to go back further. The saints in the past century symbolized my humanity, although resigned, because he describes living in the will. And he uses the word living in here, and he uses it on both sides, which you have to look at it in the context to know which way he's using it, because he doesn't segregate them out. But living, as we just discussed about Barbie a bit, when she came in here that first night and the will is in her, I'm living resigned to the will. I'm trying to do what I need to do. I want to do what Jesus would do, right? What would Jesus do is the
Saying.
saying that John talks about. I'm trying to be in his image. I'm living resigned that that's what's going on versus actually operating of the will. And so what he's making the distinction here between the differences between the saints who were resigned to it and were good people, but they didn't have, because they couldn't continuously, they didn't know how to, because he hadn't given them the knowledges yet of how to operate of the will rather than being resigned to the will. Sorry, go ahead.
Therefore, they will be many, almost like stars. They will form a beautiful ornament to heaven of my humanity. But the saints of the living in my will, who will symbolize my resurrected humanity, will be few. In fact, many throngs and crowds of people saw my humanity, but few saw my resurrected humanity. Only the believers, those who were disposed, and I could say only those who contained the seed of my will. In fact, if they did not have that seed, they would have lacked the necessary sight to be able to see my resurrected and glorious humanity, and therefore be spectators of my ascent into heaven.
Okay, pause.
Yeah.
Go first, Michelle.
No. Well, that kind of makes it sound like not everyone has the seed.
Correct. The saints of the living in my will, who will symbolize my resurrected humanity, will be few. Who will symbolize my resurrection will be few. There will be few, he tells us, who will strip themselves of everything to live of his will. To live of his will. To don't ask, go get. You want mercy? Go get it. You want grace? Go get it. You want whatever you want, go get it. It's also the few saw my resurrected humanity, only the believers, those who were most disposed. And I could say, only those who contain the seed of my will. So because you contain the seed of his will, and because you said yes to living in his divine will,
In the tree of life.
in the tree of life, but you could see him in everything. There is a difference. I'm going to take it to a human level. We have sat in this house with people who they came to listen to the writings, but they could not let go of politics. They can't let go of the world. They can't let go of trying to be in control. That's why he says there will be few who will let themselves
think
be
that's
stripped.
That's what he means. It's not that everybody is still given it, but there will be few who will
Allow it to
Fully
grow.
embrace it,
embrace it.
empty completely.
And allow new creation.
to where you won't see corruption. Remember, I know that's a Mary Bird, another t-shirt. You can't, what soul do you not want to go to heaven?
Mhm.
Oh,
And it's not even that you're just saying it, yeah, when all souls go to heaven. It's the feeling of it. Like it brings you to
The
your
yearning,
knees, like, oh my
yes.
gosh, I cannot even imagine my Father in heaven not getting one of his souls back that he loves so much. He loves because he is love.
mhm.
So you don't.
After all he did.
He said, and there's a writing where he says there will be those who just will not trust me. That's one of the readings too.
Trust.
The trust, the fullness of the trust of his mercy, and not just the mercy for you, but that you can walk into his divine will and pull out that mercy for all souls. That you don't like, well, accept him because he did such and such on Tuesday.
Right.
That's what.
So that's what I'm saying.
But doesn't that, I guess I think that, because when you said that, it's like, because you think of people that it's like, oh, wow. But those souls, you think, Father, forgive them.
They know not
Know
what they
not
do.
what they do.
Yeah.
Do you
and-
understand? That's exactly it, John. Like
Yeah.
all of a sudden you like,
He leaves
Yeah.
the
I love
99.
how you said that. Yeah, it's the
To get the
intellect that you
one
have
plan.
now because of the intelligence you have, memory,
Mhm.
will, and intellect, because you've been stripped of everything to
Mhm.
only have his intellect that you can look at him like, and that's what I said.
Yeah.
You get on his level
Yeah.
to beg him, like, but he didn't know.
Right,
He thought he was doing good for a nation. He thought he was doing good for whatever, or he just thought he was so horrible that he had to continue
Yeah.
in this sin.
Mhm.
I just had this conversation with my friend yesterday. I said, he tells us that if Adam didn't sin, we would all live with a glorified Christ. Nobody would have ever fallen. Well, that's your argument.
Mhm.
That's your argument. If Adam never would have fallen, nobody would have ever sinned. So you can't let them go to hell. You just can't.
Right.
You have to just let him in.
Yeah.
Pull him by the ear. I don't care, because he wouldn't have known sin if Adam hadn't fallen.
Sin would not have been in
Does
the
that, I
world.
mean, that
Yeah.
I'm just passionate
No,
about that
you're right.
argument. Like, no.
Yeah.
You told us this in the writings. You have to forgive them. And we know he has forgiven them.
Right.
The people haven't accepted the forgiveness. But then again, you're like, yeah, but you're God. You know how to trick him. So
Yeah.
do what you need to do to get him to open up that tabernacle
Mm-hmm.
to let the Trinity in. I mean, that's what I'm saying. But few will do that. Few will crawl up on the lap of God and beg him for souls.
Mhm.
Mhm.
What else is there? I don't know.
We'll see.
I mean, I don't know what else.
It's well, when you were using examples there, you used examples like people were kind of, well, I'm doing it, but my intention was wrong. Or just, there are people that do evil because it's evil, and even those people, it's like you don't understand. You just forgive them.
That's right.
They're
And I think the
saying
root
evil.
of that evil, the root of anger is fear.
Yes.
It's hurt children.
It's fear
Yes.
because
Yes.
they've been
Yes.
hurt.
Hurt
It's fear
children.
because they've been mistreated or,
Yes.
Yeah.
or, there could be
Lied
many
to.
reasons,
Yes.
what that can bring someone to anger. or
They've
to
been
evil.
conditioned into it.
But the root of it is fear.
I volunteered, on Thursday night with the homeless.
Mhm.
And you look at these women this young woman, she's on her 6th pregnancy. Her oldest is 14, all living with her mother. And I remember just talking to my friend, like, I don't know where to put this. Like, here it is, this thing that you're holding on to, this knowledge. And you're looking at her like, I will feed you, I will clothe you, I will house you. But you're so fallen. And I don't mean sin,
Yeah.
fallen, and da da da.
No.
But at that point, you have to cry out to God, like, you have to fix this. We
Right.
are 70 years into a welfare, relying on the government system that will never go away. And this soul is hurting, and her 6 children are hurting. And this is just one. As we said, you get on the level of God and like, you have to come. You have to fix this. Because the world doesn't know how to fix this. I am here, will do anything that you tell me to do,
Mhm.
but I don't know how to fix her. She came in from work, she was sick. And she said she wanted some soup. It's like 10:15 at night. I'm like, soup, one of us just go to bed, right? And the interior, the Holy Spirit says, that's Christ just walked through the door.
Yeah.
We just got done with working. Are you going to tell him no that you won't make him soup? I'm like, okay, I will make you soup, but we're going to go in the kitchen and make the soup because this burner's too slow. We want to go to bed. You know, it's that joking thing,
Yeah.
right? But you go in and you make the soup.
Mhm.
That's all you can do.
Yeah.
Do you understand what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
What can you do? That's what
you go to these masses now and they're all praying for all the souls in the Ukraine, and all you on your knees just like, come, God, come,
Yeah, yeah,
come,
yeah.
come.
Absolutely.
Let the kingdom reign
Yes.
because we can't fix this. That's it. That's the level. And few will do it.
Mhm.
Few will plead for all souls. Okay. So anyways, back to the crown of
Oh, yeah.
But isn't that what the blessed are doing? There's not one soul in heaven that's not pleading God for every
Yeah,
soul.
that's
to
good.
come.
Yeah. Yeah, everyone.
And they know, right? So the gift given to us living on earth that we now get to plead for every soul
Yeah.
on the level of God. Not the level of grace, but the level of love. Okay.
Now, if my resurrection
Sorry.
symbolizes the
Thank you.
saints of the living in my will, and this with reason, since each act, word, step, etc., done in my will is a divine resurrection the soul receives, it is a mark of glory that she receives. It is to go out of herself in order to enter the divinity and to love, work, and think, hiding herself in the refulgent sun of my volition. Whatever is the one, what is the wonder if the soul remains fully risen and identified with the very sun of my glory and symbolizes my resurrected humanity? But few are those who dispose themselves to this, because even in the sanctity, souls want something for their own good, while the sanctity of living in my will has nothing of its own. Everything is of God. It takes too much for souls to dispose themselves to this, to strip themselves of their own goods. Therefore, they will not be many. You are not in the number of the many, but of the few. Therefore, be always attentive to the call and to your continuous flight.
There it is.
Yep.
That sentence. Continuous flight.
Continuous flight. So once you said yes, your flight took off.
As you said.
And you're not
keep reading.
landing.
Just
That's
keep
right.
flight.
Yeah.
Well, it takes, it
Yes.
takes too much work. Like,
That's what
how
you
many,
just
why
said.
do so many Catholics leave?
Mhm.
Yes.
Too much.
The
It's
faith.
hard. Yeah.
It's too much work.
Mhm.
Too many rules.
Mhm.
Even just 1 hour on a Sunday is too much.
Right, that's
Yeah.
what I'm saying, and right here it says they don't want to strip themselves of their own good, and it takes too much.
We knew
Right.
that. We knew that.
We said that earlier.
Yeah.
I
They don't
could
want
do
to
it.
put
for-
themselves.
I could do it for 9 days.
Yeah, I
could
can
do
do
it
that
for 40 days.
completely
It's like you
That's
said,
right.
people look at, I remember signing some, like, yeah, I heard about the divine will, but there's 36 volumes. That's just too much. for me.
Yes.
Or,
No, that's true.
Yeah, it's not a devotion, it's not a novena, it's a life.
But-
No,
but-
Yes.
I think the number of volumes do get people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, whoa, this is a lot, and then, everyone kept telling me, just read. Well,
But it's also
Yep.
it's
fear,
easy for me to read and
Yep.
understand.
fear of
But look
really
at you.
falling into this. And then,
Having to detach yourself.
yes,
Having to give up.
like you said, it's fear.
Yeah.
It's fear.
To not look at yourself.
Right.
It's fear of pride.
And when in the state of grace, you're looking at yourself, right? Lord, I don't want to watch that person suffer. So can you take care of that?
Mhm.
Because it's bothering me. So I'm gonna pray for them.
Yeah.
It hurts me too much.
Others.
Make them happy.
Everything else is an excuse, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fear is the
Yeah.
thing that they want.
Now you go in front of any sort of anything and to say, no, you can't hate that person. You have to love that person.
Mhm.
They're gonna reject you right out the door.
Yeah.
Like, you're not part of us. We all have to be on this side of hate.
Yeah.
We have
Yeah,
to
right.
be on this,
Yeah.
this, you
Ready
know,
for armor, ready.
That's right.
Yeah.
right.
That's a Putin thing.
Yeah.
How can you've got love for Putin? How can you do that? Look what he's doing. Yeah. I just, this continuous flight, for me, it envisioned a bird that can never
Oh, yeah.
land.
Yeah.
It's got to continue, or an eagle,
Like a
yeah.
hummingbird.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just it can never, ever land. It's continuous.
Mhm.
Albatross.
No
It's just like-
touchdown.
It's like, Yeah, forever.
I don't think albatross is a good.
Well, they're flying over the sea all the time now, so they
If the
can't really
harbinger of
rest.
doom. then.
That's a great reading. That was a good, that was
It's
a,
amazing.
that was a good reading. So there's one crown, crown of life.
We just did one thing.
I know.
We got time.
The Incorruptible crown, I mean, if you wanted to go there, but you're gonna love that reading, because that one's
Which one?
Well,
crown number 2.
Try number 2.
are they in order
Incorruptible crown.
or are they just numbered?
Oh, no, the crown
Let's
of,
make a deal.
Are they
the
in
crown
order?
of glory and the crown of exaltation. No, I mean,
No,
probably
my
2
point
and
is
3
this.
might be
Yeah, my
comparable.
point is this, we've got about 20
Oh, let's
to
do
30 minutes
Incorruptible.
left. Let's do, well, we've got 2 readings.
Oh.
Can we do the 2 readings on the Incorruptible?
Okay, so the Incorruptible, yeah, because I think that 1905 is a short one,
Sure.
and then the long one's in 1926, but we'll just, it's got a great, yeah, let's do it.
All right, we'll do the Incorruptible crown. So then we need to go back to 1 Corinthians.
Yeah,
They're all good readings, right?
So you do
Huh?
the,
They're all good readings.
I know. This was a lot of fun to do. You guys, it's really fun to call up Mel and say, hey, let me do the next one, and then sit around all week till Friday night, and the Holy Spirit's like, you can do the 5
About
crowns.
time,
And
yeah.
it's like 10, 10, and 9, you're like, really? Like Wednesday, kind of,
How are you finding the time doing your job?
the Holy Spirit. Plus, we know these Fridays, right? Oh, where am I? Okay, sorry. 1 Corinthians. 9:25. Ooh, ready? All right, so this is the letter of St. Paul to the Corinthians, and it's just right here. Every athlete exercises self-control in all things. They do it to receive a perishable wreath, but we an imperishable. Okay. A wreath is, the thing that goes on your head. But when you get into these writings, I want you to use the word wreath as in flesh. We an imperishable. Okay. Because you've already received the crown of life, so you know you're going to resurrect. You're with the blessed, and so now we get into the perishable. All right, Mr. Mel. Oh, yours says perishable crown. Oh, mine says wreath. But yeah.
you're going to read Corinthians 15:41.
Oh, yep. Let's do that.
That's the,
Oh, it's a long one.
Mhm.
There is one glory of the sun, and another glory of the moon, and another glory of the stars, for star differs from star in glory. We should spread that. So is it with the resurrection of the dead. What is sown is perishable. What is raised is imperishable. It is sown in dishonor. It is raised in glory. It is sown in weakness. It is raised in power. It is sown a physical body. It is raised a spiritual body. If there is a physical body, there is also a spiritual body. Thus it is written, the first man, Adam, became a living soul. The last Adam became a life-giving spirit. But it is not the spiritual which is first, but the physical, and then the spiritual. The first man was from the earth, a man of dust. The second man is from heaven. As was the man of dust, so are those who are of the dust. And as is the man of heaven, so are those who are of heaven. Just as we have borne the image of the man of dust, we shall also bear the image of the man of heaven. I tell you this, brethren, flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God, nor does the perishable inherit the imperishable. Behold, I tell you a mystery. We shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed. Meaning we might not all die, but we all will be changed. Okay.
Sounds like it would come from Louisa's writings.
Yes. Oh, I didn't go to 58. Did I go to 58?
Yeah.
No.
No.
Sorry. Where did I stop? Oh, in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet, for the trumpet will sound, and the dead will be raised imperishable, and we shall be changed. For this perishable nature must put on the imperishable, and this mortal nature must put on immortality. When the perishable puts on the imperishable, and the mortal puts on immortality, then shall come to pass the saying that is written, death is swallowed up in victory. O death, where's your victory? O death, where's your sting? The sting of death is sin, and the power of sin is the law. But thanks be to God who gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. Therefore, my beloved brethren, be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that the Lord your labor is not in vain. So it was a long reading, but it was the crown of incorruptibility. You will not corrupt.
And then from the catechism, the first one is 10:16. 10:16, still in the profession of faith, kind of in the back part of it. It says, by death, the soul is separated from the body, but in the resurrection, God will give incorruptible life to our body, transformed by reunion with our soul. Just as Christ is risen and lives forever, so all of us will rise at the last day. And then the second one was 997, which says, it's still in the profession of faith, and it says, how do the dead rise? And then 997 is just below it. What is rising? In death, the separation of the soul from the body, the human body decays and the soul goes to meet God, while awaiting its reunion with its glorified body. God, in his almighty power, will definitively grant incorruptible life to our bodies by reuniting them with our souls through the power of Jesus' resurrection.
Okay, and we just read that the children of light are a symbol of his resurrection. So the catechism is telling you what is happening to the children of light. Now we read.
May 9, 1905. May 9, 1905.
Volume 6.
Volume 6. Who wants to read this?
I'll read it. The soul who is united to grace can do what death must do to her nature. Continuing in my usual state, it seemed to me that my adorable Jesus was coming out from within my interior, and with sweet and affable voice, he was saying, "And why, my daughter, can the soul, united to grace, not do in advance everything that death must do to her nature? That is, making it die in advance, out of love for God, to everything to which it will have to die. But only those who dwell continuously with my grace have this blessed death, because by living with God, it is easier for them to die to everything that is fleeting. And as the soul lives with God and dies to all the rest, her very nature comes to anticipate the privileges which must enrich her at the resurrection. That is, she will feel spiritualized, deified, and incorruptible, in addition to all the goods in which the soul will take part, feeling herself the partaker in all the privileges of divine life. In addition to this, there is the distinction of glory, which these souls will have in heaven. They will be so different from the others as heaven is different from the earth. Having said this, he disappeared.
United to grace, you are by grace, but they are by nature. So you were doing in advance everything that death must do to her nature. You're I want to say killing it off, but that's the right words. You're destroying it. You're removing it. It's over. It's over for you. Everything of the world is fleeting. So you don't care about it. By living with God, it is easier for them to die to everything that is fleeting. And that's what I'm saying. Because we're living fully with God, we don't care if anything that's happening in this world. It is all fleeting. What they say is good today will be bad tomorrow. What is bad today will be bad tomorrow. So it's all fleeting. So Okay. October 22nd, 1926.
October 22, 1926.
I think you want to read it.
That's the way you said it.
Yeah.
October 22, 1926.
Love this year.
I love this year. This is a wonderful year. October 22, 1926. The great good that the kingdom of the divine fiat will bring, how it will be the preserver from all evils. Just as the Virgin, while doing no miracle, made the great miracle of giving a God to the creatures, so it will be for the one who must make the kingdom known. She will make the great miracle of giving a divine will. I was thinking to myself about the holy divine will, and I said, but what will be the great good of this kingdom of the supreme fiat? Jesus, interrupting my thought as though in a hurry, moved in my interior, telling me, my daughter, what will be the great good? What will be the great good? The kingdom of my fiat encloses all goods, all miracles, and the most sensational prodigies. Even more, it will surpass them altogether. So it contains them and it will surpass them. And if miracle means to give sight to a blind person, to straighten up a cripple, to heal one who is sick, to raise one who is dead, etc., the kingdom of my will have the preserving nourishment, and for whomever enters into it, there will be no danger that he may become blind, crippled, or sick. Death will no longer have power in the soul. And if it will have it over the body, it will not be death, but transit. Without the nourishment of sin and the degraded human will, which produced the corruption of the bodies, and with the preserving nourishment of my will, the bodies will not be subject to decompose and be corrupted so horribly as to strike fear even into the strongest ones, as it happens now. But they will remain composed in their sepulchres, waiting for the day of the resurrection of all.
It's just
Quite visual.
quite.
Do you think it is a greater miracle to restore the sight of a poor blind one, to straighten up a cripple, to heal a sick person, or to have a preserving means so that the eye may never lose its sight, so that one may always walk straight, and so that he may always be healthy? I believe that the preserving miracle is greater than the miracle after a misfortune has occurred. I believe.
I know. It's kind of
I
like
believe.
it's kind of like
Rarely
answering back
hear
to
that,
like,
yeah.
what is the great
Yeah,
good? What
let me
is the
just tell you.
I believe
Let me tell you the answer.
you won't get sick anymore. There won't be cancer. There won't be blindness. Won't be anything.
It's paradise.
This is the great difference between the kingdom of redemption and the kingdom of the supreme fiat. In the first, the miracle was for the poor unfortunate, as it is today, who lie some in one misfortune, some in another. Therefore, I gave the example also externally of giving many different healings, which were the symbol of the healings which I gave to the souls, and which return easily to their infirmity. The second will be a preserving miracle, because my will possesses this miraculous power. Whoever lets himself be dominated by it will be subject to no evil. Therefore, it will have no need to make miracles, because it will preserve them always healthy, holy, and beautiful, worthy of that beauty which came out of our creative hands in creating the creature. The kingdom of the divine fiat will make the great miracle of banishing all evils, all miseries, all fears, because it will not perform a miracle at one time or circumstance, but will keep the children of its kingdom with itself with an act of continuous miracle to preserve them from any evil and let them be distinguished as the children of its kingdom. This in the souls, but also in the body, there will be many modifications because sin is always the nourishment of all evils. Once sin is removed, there will be no nourishment for evil. More so, since my will and sin cannot exist together, therefore also the human nature will have its beneficial effects. Now, my daughter, having to prepare the great miracle of the kingdom of the supreme fiat, I am doing with you, firstborn daughter of my will, just as I did with the sovereign queen, my mama, when I had to prepare the kingdom of redemption. I drew her so closely to me, I kept her so occupied in her interior as to be able to form together with her the miracle of redemption, which was so much needed. There were so many things which together we were to do, to redo, to complete, that I had to hide from her outward appearance those things which might be called miracles, except for her perfect virtue. Talks about, I mean, to me, that talks about why there's not a lot of Mary in
Yeah,
scriptures.
right. Right.
Because her mission, because he also said, I think it was a reading we had last week or the week before, he said that she had one purpose, her mission. Her mission was to be his mom.
Yeah.
Everything else that was so great and holy and eternal about her was not needed to be known.
Right, and it could have been because we just read the reading where he said he lived a very hidden life.
Right.
So you can't have her being able to perform miracles because people will be ringing at the door, right?
Mhm.
And then him trying to live a hidden life just doesn't work together. So she had to be even more hidden than him. And then you get into the great protector of St. Joseph, who hid both of them from everybody
Right.
to do the greatest
Then on the
miracles in the
cross, she became mother of us all.
Right. To be to give us the greatest miracle ever, his humanity.
Let me read that last line. There were so many things which together we were to do, to redo, to complete together, that I had to hide from her outward appearance those things which might be called miracles, except for her perfect virtue. By this, I rendered her more free to cross the unending sea of the eternal fiat, to be able to have access to the divine majesty, in order to obtain the kingdom of redemption. What would be greater? That the celestial queen had given sight to the blind and speech to the mute, or the miracle of making the eternal word descend upon earth?
I think that.
I think that we all would answer that easily. The first would have been accidental, fleeting, and individual miracles. The second, instead, is a permanent miracle, and it is for everyone as long as they want it. Therefore, the first would have been nothing compared to the second. She was the true Son, who, eclipsing everything, eclipsed the very word of the Father within herself, letting all the goods, eclipsing this means hidden, hide, rather than outshining. Eclipsing everything, eclipsed the very word of the Father within herself, letting all the goods, all the effects and miracles which redemption produced germinate from her life. But as Son, she produced goods and miracles without allowing herself to be seen or pointed out as the primary cause of everything. In fact, all the good I did upon earth, I did because the Empress of Heaven reached the point of holding her empire over the divinity. And with her empire, she took me from heaven to give me to the creatures. Now, I am doing the same with you in order to prepare the kingdom of the supreme fiat. I keep you with me. I make you cross its unending sea to give you access to the celestial Father, that you may pray him, win over him, rule over him, to obtain the fiat of my kingdom. In order to fulfill and consume in you all the miraculous power which is needed to form a kingdom so holy, I keep you occupied continuously in your interior with the work of my kingdom. I make you go around continuously in order to redo, to complete everything that is needed, and that all should do in order to form the greater miracle of my kingdom. Externally, I let nothing miraculous appear in you, except for the light of my will. Some may say, how can this be? Blessed Jesus manifests so many portents to this creature about this kingdom of the divine fiat, and the goods it will bring will surpass creation and redemption. Even more, it will be the crown of both one and the other. But in spite of so much good, nothing miraculous can be seen in her externally as confirmation of the great good of this kingdom of the eternal fiat. While the other saints, without the portent of this great good, have made miracles at every step. But if they turn back to consider my dear Mama, the holiest of all creatures, and the great good which she enclosed within herself, and which she brought to the creatures, there is no one who can compare to her. She made the great miracle of conceiving the divine word within herself, and the portent of giving a God to each creature. And before this great prodigy, never before seen or heard, of being able to give the eternal word to the creatures, all other miracles together are like tiny little flames before the sun. Now, one who must do the most has no need to do the least. We've heard that before.
I hear, I was just.
Do the, if you're in the divine will, you need to do the greater, let
Sure.
others do the lesser. In the same way, before the miracle of the kingdom of my will restored in the midst of creatures, all other miracles will be tiny little flames before the great sun of my will. Each saying, truth, and manifestation about it is a miracle which came out of my will as a preserver from all evils. It is like binding the creatures to an infinite good, to a greater glory, and to a new beauty, fully divine. Each truth about my eternal fiat contains more power and prodigious virtue than if a dead man were resurrected, a leper were healed, a blind person regained his sight, or a mute his speech. In fact, my words on the sanctity and power of my fiat will resurrect the souls to their origin. They will heal them from the leprosy produced by the human will. They will give them the sight to see the goods of the kingdom of my will, because until now they have been like blind. They will give speech to many mute who are able to say many other things, but only for my will were like many mute without speech. And then the miracle of being able to give to each creature a divine will which contains all goods. What will it not give them when it will be in possession of the children of its kingdom?
Hold on. It's the word they will give them the sight to see the goods of the kingdom of my will. Each truth about my eternal fiat contains more power and prodigious virtue than if a dead man were resurrected, a leper were healed, a blind person regained his sight, or a mute his speech. In fact, my words on the sanctity and power of my fiat will resurrect the souls to their origin. As his word is everything.
Right.
They will heal them from the leprosy produced for the human will. They will give them the sight to see the goods of the kingdom of my will. Because until now they have been like blind. And then the miracle of being able to give to each creature a divine will which contains all goods. What will it not give them when it will be in possession of the children of its kingdom? There's Mary Berger, hidden mystery in this whole reading, because her body corrupted. What does God have planned to do with Louisa Piquera? Our Blessed Mother was assumed into heaven, and lived fully of the divine will. Sin did not corrupt her body, but yet we know that they lifted her from her tomb, her grave, moved her to the church, and then just recently, within the last 5 years, removed her from there to underneath the altar table. And I'm just wondering if there's something in here where, in these writings, what we know our Blessed Mother is assumed. We know our Blessed Mother, it's August 15th. And we know it'll be known as the feast day of the divine will. But you have to, after reading this, I've always wondered, like, Jesus, what do you have planned with Louisa? And as we know in that reading of Ezekiel, the two were standing together holding hands.
Right.
And so the church is waiting for her to be canonized. And I've always said, he's got something greater, to be the first daughter to live of his divine will, which right there, because through her, the word of these writings are on paper for you and I to be able to read them today.
It will bring,
So he says, and then the miracle of being able to give to each creature a divine will which contains all good. What will it not give them when it will be in possession of the children of its kingdom? Just wanted to lay that out there. I don't have the answer, but if y'all come up with the answer, please let me know. I'm hoping it's going to be incredible, though, right? As the world and the church and everything's doing stuff, you read stuff like this, like she made the great miracle of writing this all down so that we could all live in the kingdom through her as the second generation, the generation of light, being the mother of all. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay, go on.
Yeah, Mary didn't have to write anything down. She just had to bear Jesus.
Yeah.
Whereas Louisa was put through a lot of suffering as she went through all this.
That's true.
A lot of suffering, not just
Mary
physical.
did too.
And Mary did as well. She was fused with Jesus. So.
But yes, that is true. But
But then it's also interesting too, because the 9 days between these, the whole time after his death and resurrection, they were in the sepulcher, right? And always talking to her. And you have to wonder, although she might not have written, that she told them stuff and then they wrote, like we talked about with St. John, and Luke came to her house and so forth. So she might not have physically written, but they learned from her.
Yeah.
Whereas Louisa is the one writing about his divinity.
It is interesting.
Very interesting. These two incredible women.
Is Louisa incorruptible?
No.
That's
what I'm saying. That's what's so interesting, that she was. And when she passed, she was in the sit-up. She was in the sitting up position. So they had to make her a special casket to put her body in it. But when they folded, it was bones.
Bones. Okay.
But then you get into that Ezekiel, the blowing the breath in, and just who, I don't know.
I didn't know about the bones.
Something, right?
Well, it tells you that it's not over.
It's not.
Because
Thank you.
That's what I think.
Will that be the great miracle?
Yeah.
Sure.
That Louisa's.
They will know. And he says that he's going to open up the skies and the heaven. They will all see her. So we know that there's going to be a great miracle with her that we will all
Yeah.
see to come to know about these writings.
Well, I'm just, you see what I'm saying is if you're
Yeah.
saying right now it's bones, if all of a sudden she takes on flesh again.
Yeah,
and
That's what
becomes
I mean. It's not over.
Yeah.
it's not over.
And this is all just speculation, any of our parts, but yeah, a great
Sure.
miracle, wouldn't that be, if you think of that,
Yeah.
Oh,
wouldn't
that's
that
a
be
huge one,
something?
yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Like it would be, and it almost like the finality of this reading right here is what I'm
Mhm.
saying. Like he's telling you this when the kingdom's here, there's no bodies you're gonna need to resurrect. There's no cancer that you
Yes,
need
it
to cure.
says
It's
it
done.
says it in this whole sentence.
because evil causes it. How many times have you heard people who are they've lived a whole stress out life and then they die of a heart attack, or
Yes.
they die of this, or they die of that because of what? Well, fear entered into them
Mhm.
and they
Corrupted the
Inflammation.
body.
inflammation, yeah, took it over
And
there.
and it's also a lack of hope. It's a lack of
Sure.
faith. It's a lack of belief that you can overcome.
And you know, Lynette, Adam lived for was it 900 years or 800 years?
890. I don't know, something like that.
So think about that, because fear never entered into him. And he was sad because he knew he lost, but that's how incorruptible his body was, that it lived 900
Mhm.
years on earth until it was able to die. That's what it's the incorruptibility is what we go back to.
Right. I mean, it says it right here. It says, this is why I keep you all occupied with the work of this kingdom of mine. There is much to do to prepare the great miracle that the kingdom of the fiat be known and possessed. Therefore, be attentive in crossing the unending sea of my will, so that order may be established between creator and creature. In this way, through you, I will be able to make the great miracle that man return to me into the origin from which he came. That man comes back to me,
Yeah.
origin in which he came, with flesh on his bones.
Mhm.
We're not done
Thank
yet.
thank you for
Oh,
reading.
jumping
that.
ahead?
Yeah, no,
I'm
that
sorry.
was the next paragraph.
Oh, I'm
Thank you
sorry.
for giving me a break and reading that.
All we need to do is read one more paragraph.
Oh,
Then I was thinking of what is written above, especially that each word and manifestation about the supreme will is a miracle that comes from it. And Jesus, to confirm what he had told me, added, "My daughter, when I came upon the earth, what do you think was a greater miracle? My word, the gospel I announced, or that I gave life to the dead, sight to the blind, hearing to the deaf, etc. Ah, my daughter, the greatest miracle was my word, my gospel. More so, since miracles themselves came from my word. The foundation, the substance of all miracles, came from my creative word. The sacraments, creation itself, a permanent miracle, had life from my word. And my very church has my word, my gospel, as regime and foundation. Therefore, my word, my gospel, were greater miracles than miracles themselves. If these had life, it was because of my miraculous word. Therefore, be sure that the word of your Jesus is the greatest miracle. My word is like impetuous wind that runs, pounds on the hearing, enters the hearts, warms, purifies, enlightens, goes around and around from nation to nation. It covers all the world and wanders throughout all centuries.
my gosh. Oh my gosh. My word is like impetuous wind that runs, pounds on the hearing, enters the hearts, warms, purifies, enlightens, goes around and around from nation to nation. It covers all the world. When the gospel has been spread around the world, then my kingdom will come. It's not about us posting the writings on the internet. It's you speaking it. It's you reading it.
Putting it out there.
You. My word is like impetuous wind that it runs, pounds on the hearing, enters the hearts, forms, purifies, enlightens, goes around and around from nation to nation.
I think what he's saying when he says my word, the word is all you need because it multiplies.
Sure. It's the seed, yeah. But it's not us humanly, it is us humanly doing by reading, discussing, talking
Yeah,
about.
what I
talking
mean is
about-
like, yeah, you saw me heal, the deaf, give speech to the mute, give sight to the blind. I could do a lot more than just what you saw.
Right. Just speak it.
Yes,
Just read it.
yes, that's why be my word.
I was thinking of what is written above, especially that each word and manifestation about the supreme will is a miracle that comes from it. It just hit me. It's not us putting this on the internet or having to walk many lands to do it, or even to throw this out as people say to do, like just give them the book, just give them the book. He's just telling you, read. Is that just me?
No, I get, because there's so much more I can do. Once
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, if you think you handing out a book
Yeah.
is going to do it, no. It's you believing
Right,
and talking about it
Mhm.
is the greatest miracle.
right.
Right?
You got a power there?
Because of me.
Okay.
I think God liked what we had to say.
It covers all the world and wanders throughout all centuries. Who can ever give death and bury one word of mine? No one. I mean, he's in several readings, he talks about, Louise is concerned about these writings, and he takes them up and he puts them all in his arms and he puts them to his heart and he blesses every single word. So who can ever give death and bury one word of mine? If he blessed them, obviously he says,
He
no,
reiterated,
he
these
says-
are my words. Yeah.
he says no one. And if sometimes it seems that my word is silent and as though hidden, it never loses its life. When least expected, it comes out and goes everywhere. Centuries will pass in which everything, men and things, will be overwhelmed and disappear. But my word will never pass away because it contains life, the miraculous power of the one who has delivered it.
Divine.
Therefore, I confirm that each word and manifestation I make to you about my eternal fiat is the greatest miracle, which will serve for the kingdom of my will. I confirm that each word and manifestation I make to you about my eternal fiat is the greatest miracle, which will serve for the kingdom of my will. This is why I push you so much, and I care so much that not a word be not manifested and written by you. Because I see a miracle of mine coming back to me, which will bring so much good to the children of the kingdom of the supreme fiat.
That's boomerang love.
And that is incorruptibility. When you contain the word, you're not going to be corrupted, body or soul, ever. And you contain these words because you believe them and you've said fiat voluntas tua, and you let it be. Right, Mr. Intellect?
Mary, thank you for this.
Yeah, Mary,
This was
thank you.
fun.
Especially
Yes,
these first two. We'll still have three more, so we may take one or two more sessions to do that.
Yeah.
Right.
We'll take however long Jesus wants us to take, right?
It's very good.
That's great. Good learning.
Yes. It is, because it shouldn't all be about,
Giving up.
yeah, kingdom's coming, people. Kingdom's here.
It's
Kingdom's coming, kingdom's
coming in its fullness.
It's coming in its fullness, and,
Yeah.
and how to get it here?
First
Keep
day of
talking
time.
about it.
Yeah.
Keep talking about it. Keep reading.
Janie or Nadira, who else do we have?
Oh,
Is this your
Or
training?
Paula, anybody before we close out would like to add anything?
I was just thinking about the centurion and the healing of his servant and his faith And Jesus only had to say the word, and his servant was healed without going into his home.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And Jesus is his word, his word is him. And our faith puts his word into power. Just at Mass, when we say, Lord, I'm not worthy for you to enter under my roof, but only say the word, my soul shall be healed. So our faith and his word is his power. So
Yeah. Thank you.
Janie, you still there?
She's there.
Yes, I'm here. I'm just slow to unmute.
Oh.
No, just thank you so much, guys. And this last sentence, because I see a miracle of mine coming back to me. Isn't that beautiful? And of course, then he turns it right back to us and says, which will bring so much good to my children, but a miracle of mine coming back to me. Is that not perfect? Complete. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, well, why don't we can go ahead and wind up the cynical by calling down the kingdom. And this was a great day. Thank you so much for all the attendees and Mary for putting this together.
Yes.
In the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Descend,
O
O
supreme will, come to reign upon the earth. Descend, O supreme will, come to reign upon the earth. Descend, O supreme will, come to reign upon the earth. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. May the will of the Father be known to the Son by the power of the Holy Spirit. Reign in me. Amen. You everybody.
Yes.
Here at the table again, and everybody that joined us via Zoom. We'll look forward to seeing you again next week.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, Paula.
Good night.
Always.
Good night.
All right, thanks for being with us.
Good night. See ya. Thanks, everybody.
First week, November.